Hi everyone, I realize that I'm between you and morning tea, so I realize it's a really difficult place to be, but thank you. And so following on Tom's presentation, one of the things we look at our organization is move the heart to change the mind. And so today we're going to talk about storytelling. I believe that great stories matter. Through great stories, meaning is shared, value is created, communities are built, and actions happen. Great stories connect brands with audiences, citizens with their leaders, and passions with their causes. What if, now I'm looking for the next slide here, give me a second. What if we could use media and entertainment as a force for good? Top big green, there's two buttons, the big green button, not the little green button. User experience right there. So what if we could use media and entertainment as a force for good? I'm going to put you back into a behavior that I am very guilty of, and so I'm just going to think about some of the things that we do in the evenings. After my children, or our children, our activities for the day are done, you sit on your couch, you turn on your streaming service, and you say, what is there to watch? And so two things generally happen when you do this. The first is, there's so much noise out there, I don't know what to watch. So the entire evening is spent searching on what to watch rather than actually watching something. And the second thing in particular is everyone's been talking about this fantastic documentary, and everyone needs to watch it, and it's front and center on your screen. And there it is, you watch it, you click on it, and it's incredible. You're 100% connected. You empathize, you're fully all in. The next day, what you do, you go to your friends, it's the greatest talk of the dinner party. And then what next? In all honesty, this is where most people stop. And so we look at the role and the responsibility of content producers, as well as the role of consumers of content, in the ability to drive behavior change. We believe that we're in a world of what we call slacktivism and vanity metrics. Awareness is no longer good enough. And yes, there's a lot of great stories with impact that are out there, but we see stories in pulses that come in and out and that die. Last year at the Oscars, a short documentary won the Great Top Award, and it was on period stigma. And for the next 48 hours, everyone and the spotlight was on this topic. Everyone was talking about it, it was in the media. And then it disappeared. And so we look at the link between problem to action, and we look at the ways that we can actually change and potentially save lives through the power of story. And how do we as consumers go from a passively viewing content to actually actively engaging with something that inherently is so emotionally driven through story? A few years ago, I'd probably not be qualified to be standing in front of you today. About 10 years ago, I was a behavioral therapist in really cold suburban Toronto, working with children with autism spectrum disorders. Fast forward, love to travel, traveled around the world, and worked primarily in emerging markets, and realized that most people, the priority of disability wasn't top of mind. Basic life necessities was really what everyone wanted to care about. And so I needed to re-educate myself and further my studies. Fast forward, here I am in Brisbane, furthering my studies and realizing what I could do through international public health. Had a chance and an opportunity to fast forward and work at the World Health Organization in Geneva, and that's where I was working on the first World Report on Disability, this massive, brilliant literature review and disability and the state of affairs globally. And it was at the WHO that I saw firsthand the intersection between research and media and communication as a driver for change. And so it takes me into this journey in the last chapter, working in the Solomon Islands in Vanuatu in the South Pacific, working at a government level, but also realizing that how do people actually change behaviors? And so I listened and I worked with the communities to see why people were not sleeping under bed nets to change their lives. And so the final chapter of this is that nothing that I've done is by design. And similar to this, I am an accidental entrepreneur and an accidental media producer. Everything that I've done here is not by design until now. And so, in a nutshell, the Story Boxes, I am the co-founder, and here we're an intersection between public health, creativity, data, and storytelling, with a mission to drive change through real stories. And we're really different in the market because people ask us, we're like, are you marketing? Are you advertising? Are you traditional feature films? Where are you and where do you sit? And so we say to them, we are different, and for that reason, we work with different parties, with new models of experimentation. We'll continually experiment as we go. One of the core principles of our company is that we look at something called the dangers of a single story. And there's this brilliant TED Talk by an author called Chimamanda that I encourage you all to watch. We have taken these principles, and Chimamanda states that the single story creates stereotypes. And the thing with stereotypes is that they're not untrue, they're just unfinished or incomplete. As a result, I'm going to share with you a couple of case studies that we've worked on in the past, a constant improvement and iteration of what that actually means to pragmatically look at change, the power of storytelling. 2 different projects here, She Starts in Frontiers, and I'm going to talk about them very separately, and you get a chance to watch a few examples of our work. She Starts on the left-hand side is a story about female entrepreneurs, and a lot of our work is data-led creativity, and data is led at the forefront. Looking at the stats, we know that there's 1 in 4 startup founders who are female. We wanted to change the conversation. And so it's about entrepreneurship and business as a vehicle for social change. And in this case, the hypothesis was, if I can see it, I can be it. All the projects we work on here is 100% brand funded. But the main difference here is that brands serve the stories, and they take a back seat to the stories that matter most from a shared value co-creation point of view. And so, Marty, can you share the first trailer, please? And I'll go into the next. Thanks.
Women represent 50% of the population, but they make up less than 1 in 4 startup founders. The future doesn't have to look like this.
We have a cultural movement of women who are not willing to be silent anymore.
It just makes sense to do something that has an impact.
So I want my daughter to see that a woman can do this.
It's absolutely a love letter to my daughter.
We're looking for ideas that we believe in.
The startup journey is much like cruising into an asteroid belt.
I know what I'm out of the world to do, and I'm doing it.
I started a startup. Like, what the hell was I thinking?
Panic, and then exhilaration and depression, and then back to panic.
So I had to make some decisions about my lifestyle. I'm living in my van.
The reality is anything could happen.
When a great opportunity comes along, why not take it?
So what's pretty cool about this is the world's first LinkedIn documentary series from Little Brisbane. And what we did was we realized that there's new players in the market of content that not only can support it from a financial point of view, but they themselves have an audience that need to be met and shared. And so LinkedIn in this case has 10 million viewers, and they have the API to be able to push the stories that matter to the right audiences. And each of our players within the market are distribution partners that can activate further conversations that need to happen. On the flip side, the hypothesis on the one was if I can see it, I can be it. And so attacking from either sides of the spectrum, different journeys and different outcomes. We worked with the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, so DFAT, on a project they're doing with an innovation exchange. And they said there are wonderful stories within this region. Where are they? And so the assumption here is we are here, we are fantastic social entrepreneurs that need to be heard, that need to be seen, and then most importantly, capital and investors need to come and invest in us. And so that was the main outcome there. So Marty, share this one and I'll combine them together.
How do you solve poverty? We've seen over the decades that aid has been used. Yes, it has had some impact, but often it has bred dependency.
Growing up, I just wanted to do something with my life. There was so much injustice. I felt like if I don't give back, who will?
The Industrial Revolutions took 150 years. China compressed that timeline into 30 years. What's the possibility to compress that timeline even further?
growing up, we never really had this much kind of flooding. Blue area that will be covered by the sea, and we have to be prepared for.
Wow, that's shocking. As an entrepreneur, you have multiple issues when working. Whenever you go to a new place, it will not be the solution you're solving. It will be the 10 other solutions that you did not think of solving that you'll first have to solve in order to solve your solution. So the entire area is flooded with water basically. We are finally at least allowing them the idea that yes, they are important, their health is important.
Nobody wants to be the first one to move. And so we think we can build what maybe the others have failed to do so far.
Really, it's honestly saved us probably decades of research.
We've realized that we may be onto something larger than what we originally conceived.
So it has to start somewhere, it has to happen someday. At least on my deathbed, I can say that, I contributed some bit to this.
So what's really cool about this one in particular is that ABC International has picked it up and it'll be distributed across 40 countries. And so fantastic. We have the top of funnel, basic awareness, and then actions, activations, both physically and digitally, for us to continue the conversation. But for the purposes of time, I'm just going to go through a couple of other case studies and pilots to talk about in kind of its entirety. This is another pilot we did with different players in the market to further experiment what needed to be done to drive change. And so we worked with YouTube and an influencer on YouTube. She had 500,000 subscribers, and this is an example of data-led creativity. Her subscribers were between 18 to 24 years old females, and we found there was a correlation between that group and anxiety and depression with social media usage. And so with our support of Jess, our influencer, we created content that was original to YouTube. First, really of its kind, it really went all the way to headquarters to showcase the type of stories that needed to happen and the types of marketing and social marketing that we created that sat around, as we call ancillary products, in order for us to drive the outcomes. And here, this is worth noting, it's very experimental. It was 4 weeks, absolutely zero budget. And it was just to see whether or not there was uptake. And for us, when basic marketing, if we look at basic marketing at the bottom of the funnel, we see that that could be technically as a sale. And for us, the greater outcome is that people watched something, was compelled to act, was so engaged and inspired, educated themselves, and ultimately did something about it that hopefully have either changed or saved lives. But we know that's not good enough. And so we realized, okay, well, that's kind of one-directional. And we're missing a huge market that we haven't discussed and we haven't tapped into. And so there's a huge potential market of the community voices that have not been served. How do we actually bring the stories that are relevant and coherent based on the narratives that we built within the larger programs in order for these voices to come up from bottom? And so we looked at ways that we could flip the model rather than having, in this case, if we take a subset like a company, an organization, a community, the vocal voices rather than top-down in headquarters, how do we actually bridge the divide and get the voices to be heard in order for us to actually drive change and understand what needs to be done? And so this is quite interesting here because, thank you, Tom. It's really good, eh? It's pretty good. And so let's go back to our data, right? And so working back with DFAT, we saw this wonderful report. The solution to the world problems may be inside your PDFs that nobody reads via the World Bank. And then a few years ago, we said, hey, DFAT, why don't we take this data and experiment within your 90,000 strong employees that are dispersed across the globe? What's great about this, just really quickly closing the gap on this one, is that the report that World Bank created, which was a PDF in itself, actually generated the most downloads as a result of that actual report itself. I find it kind of ironic and kind of fun at the same time. And so I'm going to talk really quickly around how we can do community voices and what we did with DFAT in the last 18 months as an experiment to constantly improve. And so we said, DFAT, you've got 90,000 staff members. Do you know what each other are doing? And they said, oh, let's co-design this process and let's collaborate. So we worked with multiple divisions to understand what we could be doing, what were the major pain points. Everyone has to create a cable, report systems, there's an intranet. Long story short, everything felt like they're open and receptive to potential new ways of experimenting with storytelling. And so our initial outcomes that we found was through our project with DIFA, and I'll share with you a case study or the visual very shortly, is that not only were we able to build a culture of storytelling, we're able to not only raise awareness, but we're able to enhance cultural and public diplomacy. We strengthened community engagement, and we also were able to have them help advocate for their programs and for DFAT at a large. And then finally, we were able to complement to the monitoring and evaluation activities. So Marty, do you mind just sharing? There's no sound here, so I'm just going to keep talking over it. And the thing here is the trial organically started to gain momentum across 35 countries because Cisco reports that in less than 2 years, all internet traffic will be video. And everyone has this in their pocket. Globally, this is growing strength to strength. And yet there's still no relevant, coherent way for us to create engaging content within our communities and subsets of groups for stories to be told and heard. The greatest discovery that we found here was that everyone can press record. Everyone has that little red button. But it actually takes empathy and commitment from a like-minded, aligned community for great stories to be told. And it was those soft skills that we were able to build in order for us to actually gain momentum and say, wow, this is the proof point as a result of building a culture of storytelling within DFAT. So what next? And how do we bring it back to the macro level? We've talked about ways that we can storytell through individual mobile devices, and yet the role and responsibilities of content producers as well as yourself as a consumer of content. And the thing is, and I really like this because it's a continuity of everyone's presentation, is that we need to incorporate the role of storytelling and work with new and different voices that have expertise in various forms and industries. We have people that can create compelling content. We have wonderful people that can deliver on the social impact. Those who are drivers that get it seen, that get it made. And what if we could build and use media and entertainment as a force for good? And how can we work closer together in order for us to continually drive change, as well as to continue sustaining that change? So we believe there's a gap in the market for us to engage inspired audiences through a cross-platform storytelling journey. That journey needs to be bi-directional, enabling depth and breadth of inclusive voices for us to interact with, to hear, to share, and to scale through technology. I hope that gave you a little bit of insights, and I'm happy to chat more later.